Now, hospitals in Sussex believe so-called virtual wards may be a solution for the winter pressures. Wendy Jacobs is a clinical nurse specialist for the respiratory virtual wards. Wendy, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Well, I don't think these were part of things when you did your training initially. So what is a virtual ward? How does it work?
A virtual ward is essentially a consultant-led service that looks at essentially helping patients treat them in their own homes, but by a team of specialists, particularly in respiratory at the moment, but there are virtual wards in frailty and other areas. And essentially, we're looking for patients that are coming into hospital acutely unwell. They have respiratory issues. Very often, these are patients with chronic respiratory issues, and this time of year is the worst time for them. So we tend to go and find the right patients that have had all the correct investigations, blood tests, chest x-rays, etc., that have started treatment in hospital. And then it's our job really to ensure that we can send them home with continued care from a consultant-led service with our partners in the community. So that means the hospital at home services, who essentially we communicate with every day, and they can do blood tests, they can do observations, they can provide electronic monitoring services that they continue to monitor throughout the patient's recovery at home. And then each day we reassess those the recovery process with a consultant and myself and the team in the community. And we can change antibiotic therapy or steroids, provide nebulizers, essentially all the kind of interventions that we would be doing in hospital, but within the patient's home.
Right, and so they're comfortable in their home. And what sort of reaction do you get from patients when you suggest this to them? Do most people go, oh yeah, I'd rather be at home and I'm comfortable with that treatment the way you describe it?
Yeah, absolutely, because they know that if they're at home, it's very often these are patients that have been in hospital several times before. They understand that it's not necessarily a particularly comfortable process being in hospital. And they're more likely to recover in their own home if they are moving around, if they're eating their own food that they prefer, and if they're essentially getting the same kind of treatment that they would get if they were in hospital. So most patients prefer that option, but obviously we make sure that it's the safe option for them. So we go through quite a rigorous screening process to make sure that all their investigations have occurred before they go home.
Yeah, because I suppose one of the concerns might be that people might fall through the cracks if they're not actually visible on the ward.
Well, they're visible to the staff who are highly trained in the community. So we have senior nurses who've done advanced assessments as part of their training. They're a very experienced team, and each day we have an MDT online, and we discuss the patient's progress and if there's any issues that need addressing immediately. We have pharmacists as well who are part of that team. So medication can be altered immediately and dispensed, and the nurses then will go back in and then either educate the patient, support them in using those things.
And in your experience, Wendy, what impact does that have then on the availability of beds at the hospital?
Well, it's certainly improving flow in terms of freeing up beds that aren't necessarily needed for this patient. It is a new service that we haven't had before. So, there's patients sometimes there's a bit of trepidation, and that's completely understandable. These are patients that have significant breathing illness. They're concerned about that. So our main focus is making sure that it's a safe service, but of course it does help in terms of hospital flow, particularly from A&E and the emergency floor.
Okay, and so you work in respiratory illnesses. How many other departments are using the virtual wards as well? Can you tell us?
So there is a frailty service. So obviously there are services that focus more on patients' care needs
Mm-hmm.
as they recover from illness. So there are, but essentially the respiratory and frailty services, they run slightly separately, and my focus is on respiratory.
And do you think we'll see more of this? And actually, with some of the technology we can let people take home with them that will help monitor them as well. We'll see more of this over the years, do you think?
Absolutely. I think it's it's a nationally led initiative. It's certainly, we have the technology now to be able to monitor patients at home and respond to any signs of deterioration, and equally to monitor the trends in recovery. So we can also collect the data from that and use it in other areas. But certainly this time of year, it's particularly beneficial for patients with COPD and recurrent respiratory illness.
Yeah, great. Wendy, thanks for chatting to us. Wendy Jacobs there, who's a clinical nurse specialist for the respiratory virtual wards.